the record button. So it says we are recording. So I just want to remind everybody that this briefing will be recorded. And you do see a question box. I'm not quite sure if that chat function is available, but if you do see it there, you can also put a chat in. We do have Andy Brown, the warning coordination meteorologist, that will be listening in on the briefing as well, and he's going to help me monitor any questions that you might have. So feel free to put any questions in there as we go through the briefing slides. I will most likely be kind of focused on that, and but we'll be happy to take questions at the end. And at that time, I'll go ahead and unmute everybody, and then what you will do is unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. We called a special weather briefing for today for a storm system that we are looking at coming in starting late Sunday night, but with most of the impacts going to be on Monday. So that'll go into the first slide I have here. These are the two main impacts that we are looking at least as far as the weather. We are looking at winds, which will be more of a widespread impact across our region. So these winds, we are expected to see some blowing dust at this time, more of a patchy variety of blowing dust. But the winds will also have the potential to produce isolated to scattered power outages and some tree damage. The winds will be strong enough that crosswinds will be a potential issue, especially for those high-profile vehicles. And we are starting to get into the spring season where more people are getting out on the lakes. So choppy lakes is a concern as well. And then also could see some grass fires too with the winds if we have any new ignitions. So that's something else to keep in mind. The other secondary impact is going to be the snow. Now this is only a concern in the mountains, and the heaviest snow we are expected to see up at the Cascade Crest. So we are expecting to see some heavy snow at Stevens Pass, and also Sherman and Lookout will see some snow as well. But the heaviest snow, and I'll talk more about that, is expected to be at Stevens Pass with this system. So looking at the impact outlook map here, the orange colors is where we're expected to see our more moderate impacts. And so like I mentioned, up at the Cascade Crest, this is more going to be a heavy snow. Some winds in there too could blow the snow around as well, but the primary impact here is going to be for the snow. Then as we go across the Wenatchee area, the Waterville Plateau, across the Moses Lake area, Columbia Basin, Palouse, Spokane area, even down into the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley, we are looking at most of a wind impact. And the blowing dust, sort of a secondary impact due to the winds, will also potentially be an issue around the Moses Lake, Ritzville area, where we can typically see blowing dust as we get into the spring season and as those fields start to get worked. The yellow areas is where we're expecting the winds to be more, or even the mountain snow be more of a minor impact. But also keep in mind that there are more trees for these areas, especially like north of Spokane, getting up to around like Deer Park, those areas. The winds may not be quite as strong, but there are quite a bit of trees up there too. So there is the potential that we could still see some tree damage there, kind of around the periphery of where we're seeing these orange colors here. So just something to keep in mind. The mountain snow, again, not as much of an impact for like Lookout Pass, but we are expected to see some accumulations there as well. So when we talk about the minor, moderate, high impacts when it comes to our winds, this is what we're expecting when we talk about the wind speeds. So 40 to 50, more of the minor impact variety. And so more of an isolated scattered power outages, more of a down tree limbs, might see a few trees blow over. But we could also see crosswinds being an issue and some localized blowing dust. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts, more of a minor impacts. And then as we get into the 50 to 60 mile per hour range, more of the moderate variety, so more numerous power outages, more moderate tree damage, and even more difficult driving conditions, especially for those higher profile vehicles. And then, of course, blowing dust. The coverage of blowing dust could be much more of an issue as those winds increase. With this system, we're kind of looking into more of these first two categories. We're not really expecting winds getting above 60 miles per hour with this wind system on Monday, but it's not completely out of the question. We get an isolated spot that can get up to near 60 miles per hour. So for the weather system, or for this low pressure system, we're looking more of a minor to moderate impacts. Now, these are the probabilities. We wanted to give you some probabilities across the region for these different wind speeds. And we have greater than 40, greater than 50, greater than 60, because there is still some uncertainty. We are still 3 days out, and models are still sort of coming together to come to a solution. But for the most part, and as I go through these slides, we have high confidence that we're going to see wind gusts greater than 40 miles per hour. You're going to see a lot of 100% here next to these locations. We even have some fairly high confidence for a lot of these locations of seeing 50 mile per hour gusts, or even stronger than that. So for Central Washington, Omak, Wenatchee, Moses Lake, Waterville, Ritzville, there's some Ritzville more of like a 50-50, but these other locations we're looking at 80% or higher. And like I said, 60 mile per hour. The Waterville Plateau, this is one of these where the guidance is showing high probability, but this could be more of just winds coming down the Cascade Mountains. Sometimes this could be a bit spotty. So this is one of those spots where it might be more of an isolated, could see a 60 mile per hour gust there on the plateau. But all these other ones, you can see those percentages really start to drop off as we get to gusts that strong. Moving over to Eastern Washington, so Colville, Deer Park, Spokane, the airport, Pullman, Pomeroy. Colville, the strongest winds aloft are not going to be more over our northern zones. So that impact map, there's a lot of kind of green up around the Okanagan Highlands, and then kind of the yellows into Northeast Mountains and the Northern Panhandle. And that's just because the strong winds, you might hear jet stream with weather reports, that is going to be more to the south. So these percentages, that's why these are a bit lower here for Colville and Deer Park. But as you get to Spokane, Pullman, and those Pomeroy areas, again, high confidence of greater than 40 miles per hour, and even some moderate to high confidence of seeing greater than 50 mile per hour gusts. Pomeroy is another one of those isolated spots where we could see winds getting up to around 60 mile per hour or greater. Again, I think those wind gusts will be more of the isolated variety, but Pomeroy, just being there in the Blue Mountains, we do see where we could see some winds getting a little bit stronger there coming off coming around those mountains. And then for North Idaho, this is what we're expecting again as we kind of get a bit further south around Lewiston and Winchester. That's where the strongest winds aloft, the better chances of mixing down. Our percentages are getting higher there as well. So Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene, St. Mary's, the percentages aren't quite as high. More of the potentially getting up near 40 miles per hour, but for 50 mile per hour to, let's say, mostly or around 60, we're looking at a bit further south in the Panhandle around Lewiston, Winchester. This slide here, I just wanted to remind everybody that last year around this time, we did actually have a windstorm come through. We had some strong wind gusts. And this was on March 28th last year. So the image that you see here, these were the maximum wind gusts that were reported on that day. So you'll see that there's a lot of winds between that 50 to 60 mile per hour range, even actually a little bit stronger, south of Moses Lake, getting towards the Tri-Cities. So this setup that we're seeing, this is a pretty good comparison. So we wanted to just kind of show this slide to jog your memories a bit from last year to give a comparison. So as I mentioned, we did see widespread gusts of 50 to 60. The impacts that we did see, there was blowing dust across portions of the Columbia Basin, around Moses Lake to Ritzville, those areas. There were reports of near zero visibility in spots, and we did actually have, unfortunately, a pile up. I think I remember reading there were 8 cars that piled up on State Route 26, where it was particularly bad, near zero visibilities. So this is a possibility with the winds on Monday and blowing dust. The confidence is low that we'll see those impacts, but it is a possibility. We did see many trees blown down around the Spokane County. And due to those trees coming down, we did see power outages, power lines down, and roads being blocked. It's difficult to say we'll see as many trees impacted with this next one on Monday. As I said, those stronger winds that we're expecting to mix down will be the higher confidence is a bit further south in Spokane than what we were seeing last year. But we could see some brief gusts getting to those strengths where we might see some tree damage. So Monday's winds are comparable. I think this is a good proxy to look at. But the strongest winds, as I've already mentioned a few times, are more likely across the southern portions. So let's say Wenatchee, Moses Lake, to Pullman, and further south. So these kind of numbers you see here from last year, it's looking like we could see some fairly similar wind gusts, especially in that 50 to 60 mile per hour range. Okay, so going into a little bit more detail about the blowing dust, we just wanted to remind everybody that we are in drought conditions. And even just in the last 90 days or so, we have not seen a whole lot of precipitation in central Washington. So these red colors, we're getting into the, looks like 25 to 50 percent of normal. So 50% of normal is half of what you would expect, and that's how you would interpret 50%. So we are seeing a deficit of precipitation across these areas, and we made some calls to agricultural agencies yesterday and confirmed that a lot of these fields are being worked around the Moses Lake area, so Grant County to Adams County. And so with the winds that we're looking at, we could see some source regions of dust being produced across these areas that could produce some impacts. So this is what we're generally expecting right now for dust, and can be a hard impact to predict. And it's something that we will continue to look at through the weekends and encourage you to monitor updates as we produce them. But for now, we are looking at the potential for patchy blowing dust. And what that means is that there will be a lot of areas that may not see impacts, but the areas that are near source regions for these dusts where fields have been recently worked, we could see visibilities getting quite poor. So the time frame is Monday afternoon into the evening. And so just a reminder, drive with caution. And so these are some of the spots that tend to see, or at least coming up for Monday, that we have higher confidence we could see some patchy blowing dust. So Interstate 90 from George to Sprague, along that route there, especially in that Moses Lake area to around Ritzville, I would say, because those are closer to the source regions for the dust. Around Royal City to Dusty on State Route 26, and 395, essentially Ritzville southward, and Highway 2 potentially could be seeing some blowing dust. This route here isn't going to be as close to source regions, so it might be, visibilities might not get quite as bad along Highway 2 there, but could see some of that dust blowing across there as well. There's also an increased risk for grass fires just because of the strength of the winds. And if there are any new ignitions, then we could see, I mean, with these kind of winds that we're looking at, where we could see, gusts to around 50 miles an hour, that would definitely lead to increased spread for fires. So just something to keep in mind. We're pretty early in the season, so this is not a high or a big impact that we're expecting, but just another impact that we could see. And it's because we're kind of in that pre-green up stage here. Okay, so, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce my name. I just looked over in the question box. Yeah, my name is Stephen Van Horn. Sorry, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. So I'm one of the forecasters here in the office leading the briefing for today. So that was sort of the meat of what we're expecting for the winds impacting the region. The other impact we're expecting is going to be for mountain snowfall. So I have a couple graphics here. The one on the left is what we are expecting. So this is what we have in our forecast for expected snowfall. And the two main, I guess, locations here to look at would be Stevens Pass, where over 2 feet of snow will be possible. And so a lot of these, kind of darker red colors here indicating that amount of snow. But those amounts drop off quite a bit as you get east of the crest. It's going to be mostly just right at the crest there for the snow, and then really decreases as you get to, let's say, Coles Corner eastward. And then the other area is going to be in the central Panhandle Mountains, where Lookout Pass, we have 6 to 8 inches currently in the forecast, and is what we are expecting. Now, this is going to be in the Cascades beginning Sunday night. For Lookout Pass, would be beginning on Monday. I would say the better chances for accumulations might be more into the Monday night time frame, where temperatures will be getting even colder behind the front. So that's why this area here, not as much moisture and may not accumulate as well. Those accumulations are quite a bit lower. And just to drive home the point, at Stevens Pass, we have high confidence that we're going to see over 1 foot of snow there, and even 1.5 feet. I would say we have high confidence. And that kind of goes to this table down here. If you look down at the bottom, Stevens Pass, mainly just want to kind of point your attention to these greater than equal to for snow accumulations. So for 1 foot of snow, I'm not quite sure why it doesn't quite match up to this, but essentially mid-90s to high 90s percent, near 100%. Essentially, even at 1.5 feet, we're looking at 67% chance of seeing that much snow. Lookout Pass, we have high confidence that we'll see greater than equal to 4 inches of snow, but then drops off quite rapidly as we get to 6 inches, and not expecting greater than 8 inches of snow there at Lookout Pass. Okay, so in summary, this slide has quite a bit on it, but we are expecting a strong windstorm, likely for beginning Sunday evening, but really the strongest winds, and this is highlighted in this color image here. The strongest winds more in the Monday afternoon into the Monday evening time frame, indicated by these orange colors, or moderate impacts. So our biggest impacts, as I mentioned at the beginning, is going to be for the winds. And in this box here, just wanted to reiterate, we're looking at more of a minor to moderate across the region, where the moderate impacts are more for that Wenatchee area across the basin to around the Palouse, and even potentially into the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley. There's more uncertainty for that spot just because the winds need to kind of mix down into the valley. But that is where the stronger winds aloft are going to be more centrally located across the southern portion of Washington State. So we do have, fairly moderate confidence for isolated power outages, seeing some tree limbs being damaged or broken, high impacts to high-profile vehicles, and patchy blowing dust. And then where the confidence is lower, but still a possibility, is seeing more of a numerous power outage potential with the winds, maybe even seeing toppled trees, more so than just some isolated trees being toppled here and there, but more of a, could see more of a, I guess, more than just some isolated trees here and there toppled over. And, if we're going to be seeing winds more of the 55 mile per hour or greater range, then, we could have some difficult driving conditions even for most vehicles, but especially so those high profile vehicles. And then the blowing dust coverage would be more of like in areas than the patchy. So these are potential impacts, but the confidence right now is just low that we'll see that. So there is still some uncertainty in the strength of the strongest winds, and we'll continue to be monitoring that through the weekend and producing updates when needed. And again, strongest winds from Monday afternoon to the evening. And then winter travel, just want to make sure, it's for more of just an isolated area in our region, but winter travel with heavy snow expected over Stevens Pass during this period as well. I will go ahead and stop now. Andy, did we get any questions there in the box that we need to address?
I wish I could answer that. I added myself as a panelist and not an organizer, so I cannot see the questions.
Gotcha.
So you'll have to take a look at that.
All right. Yeah, it doesn't look like I have any questions here. So I'll go ahead and open up to everybody. And if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and write it in the question box if you like, but you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question as well.
I do have a question. This is Simone with Spokane County Emergency Management.
Yes.
I'm wondering, what are you expecting for sustained winds during that time period? Really, you've only discussed the gusts.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So for sustained winds, we are looking at 30 to 35 miles per hour, kind of a widespread. So getting to around 35 for sustains or higher would be more of the coverage would be a bit less. But I would say sort of widespread 30 to 35 for sustained mile per hour. That's the potential that we're looking at.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? Let's see, there's one in the box here. Okay, so we have a question of precipitation. No, outside of the mountain snow, we're not looking at significant amounts of precipitation that are expected. I guess I will add, though, that we will be seeing some rises on a river, so there will be some rainfall and some snow melt. So mostly in the panhandle, we could see some rises, but we're not expecting any of those forecast points to be reaching flood stage or anything like that. So I guess just another minor sort of addition would be just that we will be seeing some rises. The base flows for the rivers now are a bit higher than what we were seeing just a month ago. Hopefully that answers your question, Gus. If you have more, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question as well. Oh, yes, you're welcome. Are there any other questions that we could answer? Again, Andy is on too, and be happy to answer any questions. You just can't see the question box.
This is Simone again.
Yes.
I anticipate you'll probably be sending us some updates if there are any higher confidence or changes over the weekend. Is that correct?
Yes, we will definitely be sending some updates, whether that could be a one-pager we send. We could also do another live briefing as well. I was going to pose this question after we're done with our Q&A session here, but feel free to chime in if you'd really like to see us do another live briefing like this. We could do it tomorrow or Sunday, the day before the event, or even both days. It's really up to what you guys would like to see from us. and to support you.
Personally, I will just speak for our agency. I think if there are no changes to what you've presented, we probably wouldn't need another briefing. But I think what I would enjoy a briefing is if all of a sudden have a much more moderate conference of impact of winds to be higher, or for a longer period of time, or that it would if it's just a increased confidence in the impact, or how high the winds are going to go. If they go, you're expecting higher gusts, then perhaps I would appreciate an updated briefing.
Sure, yeah, we could definitely do that. I do see in the question box here that there's a couple that would like to see an updated briefing on Sunday, and we can certainly do that. We'll be just a day before the event by that time, so our confidence should be even higher than it is now. So we can certainly set up another GoToWebinar where we can do a live briefing on Sunday, and then of course we can do email updates as well if our confidence changes, especially gets higher with the winds.
Sounds good. Thank
Great.
you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good idea. We'll send an update tomorrow with just kind of keeping everybody informed on where we're at and if anything has changed. But I think Sunday is a good idea. We'll also obviously send out an updated briefing after we do the live briefing, but it will just kind of narrow down exactly what we expect, when the timing is going to be, what the impacts, and our confidence level on all that. So I think that's a great idea to update it on Sunday, just to keep everybody informed. If you don't want to dial in, then take a look at the briefing when we email it out, and call us if you have any questions. But for those that want to hear our voice or ask questions, we'll do that live briefing on Sunday morning.
Yeah, okay, great. And like I said, this is being recorded, and we can record the one on Sunday as well if you're not able to actually join in on the live portion. Okay, any other questions that I could or Andy answer for you? Okay, well, I'm not seeing any additional questions in the question box or hearing anybody, but please feel free to give us a call at the office if you do have something that comes up, have a question that you'd like to ask us, and we will get another live briefing set up for Monday at the same time. We'll go ahead and just do it at 10 o'clock as well.
Thanks so much.
Yes, you're welcome.